9. Movie review. So this is another one of my scripted movie review series, which means I take an old review I wrote years ago on the weblog and just try and make a YouTube video out of it for whatever that may or may not be worth. It's been interesting doing this project because as I go through all these movies that I wrote about 10 years ago, a number of them seem to have completely been forgotten about. You know, they generated some buzz at the time, people were talking about them, and then I think a lot of them have just disappeared. I mean, they haven't literally disappeared, but nobody talks about them anymore. And I would include this movie in that category with the usual caveat that I may be out of touch because I've been living in Asia for a long time. So I don't know, maybe I'm out of touch, let me know. But I think this movie has largely been forgotten about the past 10 years. It generated some minor buzz when it came out, I believe. I was also in Japan when it came out, but I was back home and then I saw a magazine article that said this movie was a must-see for any sci-fi fan. And then I was in the video rental store that night and I saw this movie and I picked it up and I decided to give it a watch. So, going into this movie completely cold, and not really knowing anything about it other than the magazine article. Sorry, it wasn't an article, it was a blurb, really, that said this was a must-see for any science fiction fan. I had no idea what to expect. The film starts off as a complete mystery. You don't know what in the world is going on, but you're intrigued by the concept. So you stick around hoping that the film will provide some answers. Instead, the film just throws one action sequence after another at you. Now, as a young boy, I always loved movies with lots of action sequence. In fact, the more action and the less talking, the better, was my philosophy when I was younger. And even though I'm older now, I've still retained somewhat of the heart of a 12-year-old boy. Love movies with lots of action, get bored quickly with movies with lots of talking. So you would think that a movie like this would just is one action scene after another. I mean, it's an animated movie, but an animated movie with lots of action scenes would have been exactly what I wanted. And I thought that's what I wanted, but it turns out that's not what I want. I want to know who these characters are, what their situation is, and why I should care about them. And then once I have that, then give me the action scenes. As it turns out what I wanted. Because just having the action scenes just bored me. Instead, I wanted to know who these characters were. I wanted to know where they were. I wanted to know when they were. There's some sort of bizarre post-apocalyptic landscape in this movie, but nothing is ever explained. I really wanted something to let me get into the story, but the movie gives you so little. That, and I also found a lot of the action scenes mildly confusing. I mean, generally, I could follow what was going on, but a lot of the quick cuts and fast movements would often leave me confused as to who hit who, or how a character got from point A to point B. The end of the movie is very unsatisfying also. There are a whole ton of questions that are left unanswered. The movie flirts with genius, no doubt about it. The concept of a bunch of living rag dolls running around during a post-apocalyptic battle between man and machine is a concept so bizarre, it's intriguing. But ultimately, the movie doesn't do enough with it. So that's my review. As an addendum to the review, I was on Wikipedia just now, just before I started filming. And I noticed on Wikipedia the plot synopsis is a lot more detailed than I remember. I remember this movie not having a lot of information about what was going on. And then Wikipedia actually talked about the viral marketing for this movie, which I missed. But I guess there were a number of trailers released that included some of the backstory to this movie. And apparently there was something on Facebook which included a bunch of essays that were supposedly written by the scientist that gave the background to this movie, and there was a video game tie-in. So apparently, if you collect all the viral videos and the marketing and the stuff written on Facebook and the video, then maybe you do get a coherent story out of this thing. What I got from just renting the DVD was not a coherent story. Well, no, it was a coherent story as far as it went. But it was very hard to tell what was going on in terms of the world, if that makes sense. In other words, I could follow the chase sequences broadly. I mean, I knew who was chasing who, as I said in the review. Some of the points about who hit who or how they got to point B got a little bit murky with the quick cuts, but you broadly knew what was happening in the chase sequence. But this whole world, which, you know, the movie starts out, and again, it's an animated movie, following these ragdoll characters who are running around in some of this post-apocalyptic world where there's some sort of battle going on with machines and men. And you're like, okay, this is interesting. Who are these ragdolls? Where did they come from? What's going on? But then the movie doesn't really explain any of that. And apparently, according to Wikipedia, it is explained in like the Facebook essays or something like that. I didn't know any of that when I just rented the movie. So yeah, in conclusion, to repeat what I said earlier, it is intriguing. There's some very interesting visuals going on, and there's some hints at a very interesting world going on here. But I felt like none of it was explained in the movie. Apparently it's explained elsewhere. I don't know. I don't know if I'd really recommend this one. But I didn't hate it either. There's stuff in there to excite the imagination a little bit, but it doesn't really fully deliver as a coherent story within the movie itself.